One Piece chapter 1076, and it feels like the One Piece world is literally about to implode just because of so many different moving pieces and different factions with big players actually making a move. It really feels like the end game now. And ever since the end of Wano, Oda has been in a row with the chain of events so far because a lot of ramifications are gonna come out of this, and it's obviously leading towards that final war, or at least the start of the final war. And this is exciting. We have Law versus the Blackbeard Pirates. We don't know what happens in that situation. We have Luffy versus the Seraphims, and Saturn and Kizaru coming with 100 ships. We have Sabu's unknown situation. We don't know where he's at. We thought that he was with Vivi, but that doesn't seem to be the case. We have Kuma in Maridroa, and he seems to be going for something that's ultimately going to come down to some reveal later on with the world government. We also have Garp on his way to save Kobe, which will more than likely tie in with Law's situation or whatever happened with Law. And finally, with the recent chapter, we have Kid versus Shanks. Oda is not playing around, and this is culminating towards that chaos that Doflamingo was talking about. All of these factions are going to get involved, and everything is just going to implode into pandemonium, and we're definitely here to see that all the way through. Now, before I keep going, guys, I'd appreciate it if you dropped a like on this video. Let's go for 500 likes. Definitely helps me push out more content for you guys. Hit the bell if you want to get notified for more content, and subscribe if you are new here. Now, first things first, Shanks versus Kid, easily the biggest part of this chapter and easily the most hype. Now, when it comes to the top supernovas, I've always felt like Kid was the underdog just because he doesn't get his credit, and this is due to the fact that for the most part, Law and Luffy looks a lot better, and this is something that we've obviously seen throughout the course of the story. Even though Oda wants to make Kid one of the more important supernovas right next to Luffy, and that's why Kid gets a lot of flack in the story, because his intended portrayal doesn't go along with his feats. But I think as of right now, after the end of Wano, Oda has finally started to build up what he wanted for Kid. Because if you remember, Oda did say that he had plans for Kid more so than Law. And so I think we're starting to see the beginning of all of that. And so even though Kid hasn't lived up to the hype, Kid is definitely a character that I still look up to highly. And I think Oda definitely has something in store for him here. Now, in this chapter, we come to find out that Shanks is on Elbaf. In the previous chapters, we know that Kid was heading to Elbaf. And so we come to see that Kid and Shanks have made indirect contact because each of them are now aware of each other's presence. And of course, there's only one thing that can happen after this, especially when two conquerors meet. A battle is for sure to take place, especially considering the history between Kid and Shanks, because initially Kid had the alliance to actually take out Shanks in the first place, and it seems like even though that isn't the intended goal as of right now, it looks like it's still going to happen regardless. Now, of course, the underdog in this situation is obviously Kid because he's going up against Shanks, which is a full-blown Yonko crew, and a Yonko crew that is hinted to be the strongest out of all of them. And so this is a serious matter because even Killer was saying that they didn't even get a glimpse of Shanks before, and that they were beaten to a pulp with no chance of fighting back. And that situation would eventually turn out to Kid losing his arm. And so to encounter Shanks again, especially with the prestige that a Kid has now that he's defeated a Yonko, Shanks can no longer take this as a joke, right? Because if they were able to take down a Yonko, regardless if he had help or not, that is a serious threat. And so this time Shanks isn't going to hold back and will come with full force and actually eliminate Kid. So in some sense, Shanks is actually giving Kid his respect here just because of his accomplishments so far. And it's even crazier because Shanks has not only taken his entire crew, but also some of the members of the giant pirates. So Shanks is coming with this force just for Kid and his crew. This is definitely setting up something insane for Kid. So this is an encounter that is very unpredictable because on one side I see Kid, who is slowly developing into what Oda wanted him to be, but on the other side there's Shanks, who is revered to be the strongest character by a lot of people in the community. So you have character purpose versus individual strength, and so it sort of cancels out and you don't really know what's going to happen next, because normally you would think that, oh, Shanks is going to take this and it's going to be over, but I think there's more. Oda is not going to be redundant in which he's going to have Kid lose like he did back then. There's going to be something that's going to be added into this fight or this encounter that we're not going to see coming. Again, I'm not saying Shanks is losing, but there's going to be more to this fight in favor of Kid. And talking about Shanks's demeanor and vibe in this chapter is just insane, because he essentially tells Kid, you either run away or you stay behind, give me all your poneglyphs, and die. Choose wisely. I don't know, Shanks' appearance in this whole chapter was just cool as hell. And of course, like we all expected, Shanks is affiliated with Elbaf in some way, shape, or form. Now, we don't know if he's with the entirety of Elbaf or just the giant pirates, because there could be some separation there. But it does seem like Elbaf is under his banner. I do also want to point out that it is heavily hinted that the person that took off Kid's arm was Ben Beckman, which isn't as bad because some people thought that it was one of the lower rankings that did that to him. So in a sense, Kid had his first commander battle way more earlier than Luffy, of course, which resulted in his defeat, but it definitely did provide some sort of experience. So again, we'll see how this whole situation turns out, and it is extremely hype. Now, moving back to Egghead Island. Coming off of the previous chapter, we come to see that Luffy and Zoro do release Kaku and Rob Lucci. And it's funny because Rob Lucci was saying all the wrong things to actually have them release them, but because they were going up against the Seraphims, they had no choice. And so this eventually led to a temporary team up between Luffy and Rob Lucci, and of course Kaku and Zoro, each of them taking one of the Seraphims. Now, I'm surprised that Luffy actually needs help here, but again, Luffy doesn't necessarily want to go into Gear 5 all the time, so we do actually see him go into Gear 4, which a lot of people thought that Gear 4 wasn't going to be a thing anymore because he can just use Gear 5, but again, I think that there's a drawback about Gear 5 that we're not aware of yet, so I think it is still important for Luffy to use Gear 4 when he can. But I will say that Oda is hyping the Seraphims up because he is really giving them this insane portrayal, and you can't really deny that because from a potential perspective, the Seraphims have insane potential. It is possible that they could honestly become future Yonkos in the series, or even stronger than that, because even as kids, they're giving problems to Luffy and Kaku and all these strong fighters, right? And they haven't even developed yet, so it's definitely a scary thought. We did also get the reveal of S-Hawk's ability, and this is something I actually talked about with Brago on one of his streams, and we talked about the potential of like Vegapunk giving these Seraphims the perfect devil fruit to match their fighting skills, especially for the warlords that didn't have an ability. And so with S-Shark, we saw that he had the swim fruit, and of course this matches really well because he's a fishman. And with S-Hawk, it is revealed that he has the dice fruit, which is Mr. One's fruit, which allows him to become a weapon, specifically a blade, and that is nasty when you give it to someone like Mihawk, who's a top tier swordsman, where his whole body can become a blade. So we're seeing that Vegapunk is mix matching here to give more potential to the Seraphims. So him having the dice fruit is actually insane. Now, we did get a really cool double spread here with Luffy and Rob Lucci, and of course Kaku and Zoro doing a combination attack. Of course, with Luffy going into Gear 4 and Rob Lucci going into Hybrid, and then we had a Onigiri from Zoro as well as a Ryan Kaku from Kaku. So overall, pretty cool combination attack. I do also like the fact that Luffy is like, we're gonna release you, but you're not gonna be able to do anything afterwards because I'm just stronger than you. And he tells that to Lucci to his face, just showing his dominance over him. That was definitely savage coming from Luffy. Now, the traitor plotline is still ongoing and we're not sure who this individual is, but based on this chapter and seeing that Vegapunk is actually in a prison with a bunch of other CP members, it sort of has to mean that this is someone that was knowledgeable about Egghead, because they had prisoners kept here for quite some time, and Stella was unaware. And if Stella was unaware, it sort of absolves the other satellites as well, because we do know that they share a memory sync in which one say they sync their memories together. So this sort of means that it can't be one of the satellites unless one of the satellites was doing something to themselves to not allow the memories getting synced or something of that sort, but that seems a bit far-fetched. It's looking like it's a third party, honestly. At this point, I'm not sure who it is, right? But based on what this person is doing, it seems like it has to be one of the satellites just because of how close they are to Stella. Because apparently Vegapunk's study of the poneglyph got leaked to the war government in some way, shape, or form. So there's something going on here. I no longer think it's Blackbeard or the Blackbeard pirates, because they wouldn't want to leak anything to the war government about Vegapunk unless they wanted, you know, some sort of reward or something. But I don't think that's how the Blackbeard pirates play, at least not now anyways. And overall, it just seems a bit far-fetched to have like the Blackbeard pirates like just come to Vegapunk's island and know all these machines and like trap up all these CP0 members or CP members in a jail for quite some time and leak Vegapunk's poneglyphs and all that. It seems a bit too much, right? Too much digging for Oda to justify. So it has to be one of the Stellas or a third party we're not aware of yet. So we'll see. Now we also get an update on the Marines coming to Egghead, and apparently they have over 100 ships coming to Egghead to decimate the Straw Hats and kill Vegapunk, of course. Now this is insane. Now part of it is probably because one of the Gorosei is coming there, but also because Luffy is a Yonko and they need a lot of manpower to deal with that, right? This is beyond a Buster Call. Like, this is on a whole different level, and I'm starting to think that Luffy is gonna need help. Like, a lot of people think the Straw Hats are good, but they have an admiral and also a Gorosei who we don't really know his power potential. We could also have those super vice admirals like the Chanten and Momosagi on those ships, and overall they just have a lot of manpower. So this is a situation that I think is bad for the Straw Hats. I don't think the Straw Hats have enough manpower to deal with all of this. Even though, you know, Luffy's a Yonko and all of that, that doesn't necessarily make him invincible. This is really bad for the Straw Hats. So I do think that something needs to happen for them to get out of this situation, because I don't think they're doing it on their own. Now personally, I do think that Dragon is coming to Egghead, and that's going to be something that's going to save Luffy. And again, I've talked about this in the video. If you do want to check it out, links will be in the description. But this whole situation is just a mess right now. But overall, very interesting chain of events in this chapter, especially with the Kid and Shanks thing. That's something that I'm really looking forward to, because I think Kid definitely needs his credit. So we'll see where that goes. But that is pretty much it for this video, guys. I'd appreciate it if you dropped a like on this video. Comment down below what you guys think. Subscribe if you're new here, and hit the bell if you want to get notified for future content on this channel. You can follow me on Twitter at Ferrospace, but it is Ferro, and I will see you folks later. Peace.